Yellow. Little Nightmares is a bit of an esoteric tale. It's difficult to explain, and there's no dialogue in the games themselves, although there is some in the comics and a podcast series. When I first finished the series, I went looking for information on the story to see what other people thought. While a lot of it was objective and or good observations that I missed, I felt like a lot of the theories were completely unsupported. Not only did they have no evidence supporting them, but they would often have evidence contradicting them.
If you finish that sentence, I'm eating you too.
Sure, you can make baseless claims with evidence that's so circumstantial it's debatable if it even counts as evidence, but I don't like that. So my goal with this video is to give an interpretation that's not just a shot in the dark. So let's throw our hat in the ring, embrace our inner Wendigo, and try to give my interpretation of the story. Can I have that back? Let's start where it all began. Little Nightmares 1. We start with a vision of the lady, then Six wakes up. Oh yeah, this is Six, by the way. That's her name. Everyone in this series has a weird name. Well, almost everyone. Anyway, you find a dude sleeping vertically, I swear, YouTube.
Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes.
And a door with an eye on it. We're gonna see a lot more eye-related things as the story keeps going. I'll try to keep pointing them out, but for now we're gonna continue on. We crack open this fridge. Oh, Gnome! Come here! Gnome! Yeah, give me a hug! Yeah!
Well, see ya.
This is called a gnome. We'll go into what they are later. The game then makes a reference to Nancy Drew, Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake.
Rotten floorboards, watch your...
And run into a lot of leeches.
Ah, no, I hate this part, no, I hate this part, no!
Want to know more about the leeches? So do I. Moving on. You spot some dude dragging something heavy. I'm sure that's not important. Then you come across this... I
purposely had to botch that part because for my video. Like, I was home free, but I pretended to botch it. I could also just run into this and die.
This eye seems to be a security system of sorts. As you can see here, much like Jared Fogle, its primary target is children. We see children frozen exclusively here, and a child's bed with a drawing of an eye over it. Not much information I can give here yet, so away we go! As we enter this room of children sleeping, we encounter Roger. His name is Roger? Why does he get such a normal name when everyone else has names like The Hunter or Mono? Oh, the Janitor! Please, you gave me Roger, I'm calling him that. Screw you, Roger! Anyway, Roger here is the main antagonist of the upcoming level, so we'll talk more about him when we get there. We continue until Six starts doubling over in hunger. This is very sudden and clearly unnatural. She's handed some food from an older-looking boy, and the hunger subsides. While we eat, we can see a shadow version of Six watching as she eats. Also, spoilery side note, this happens a few more times in the game, and while recording those bits, I was looking for Shadow Six unsuccessfully, so I instead was just flinging the camera around like the orangutan that I am. At this next part with the eye, you may notice that the room was swaying because the janitor's cart is rolling back and forth across the room. In fact, this has been happening the entire game. This is where I first realized I was on a big boat. This boat is called the Maw, and as we'll see, it's massive. As you proceed, you double over in starvation again and eat a totally trustworthy hunk of meat in a cage. It's a trap. Kind of weird that that worked out for Roger. I mean, how long had he been sitting there? We wake up in a cage with other children all around us and use them to help us escape, proceeding to do nothing to help them. So if you couldn't tell, Six isn't super innocent. It's to the point where most of the community actually calls her a psychopath. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I really don't think she's a psychopath. I'll explain that more in detail later. Anyway, here's Roger. He's got stubby little legs, big ol' arms, a killer smile, and most fun for me as a writer, he's blind. Roger's the janitor of the mall, supposedly, as the blind are known for their ability to spot messes and clean them up. He also collects and takes care of the children who find themselves within the mall. He then prepares them for, later use by stuffing them in these bags. As we'll see later, the children who go into these bags aren't necessarily dead, but I don't imagine they're in good shape. After he chases you for a bit, you chop his arms off with a door. I bet he didn't see that coming. This is probably why I get like 200 views total. Anyways, you eat a rat, run into all these other children, and meet the chefs. I didn't record this, but if caught in certain points of the game, you get thrown into an oven. Roger wishes he could throw anything about now, right? It's not even a blind joke. Anyway, it's heavily implied that the meat cooked here is children. However, it's worth noting that some of the meat here is clearly not all children. We see fish, wine, other ingredients, but yeah, children are on the list.
Hi. Dead.
Another thing I need to point out that I also didn't record myself is that the chefs are wearing masks. Actually, most, if not everyone on the mall is wearing a mask except the children. We'll go into this more later, but I thought I'd mention it while we were here. After escaping the chefs, we see the absolute size of the mall. And what's more, we get this gorgeous shot of a lot of fat people entering the mall. Here's where we see the mall's purpose. It's a restaurant made for people with an insatiable appetite. An appetite much like Six's. You think that's connected at all? Anyways, this isn't seen in the game itself, but on the official Little Nightmares Facebook page. They posted this about the mall.
The mall arrives every year. Always the same time, but never the same place. It creeps and crawls and buries its claws deep beneath the glistening water. And there it sits in the vast silence, waiting. Soon after, they start to arrive, the guests. The monstrous, sweating, hungry guests, all seams bursting, bodies bulging. Eyes dead with boredom, they shuffle into the gangway and into the mouth of the maw. And then they are no more, for none of those who enter have ever returned to tell the tale.
At least not yet. So the most important thing we get from that is that all of these guests who come to the mall of their own volition do not leave. This explains the massive amount of shoes we find after being chased by Roger. Oh yeah, I skipped that part earlier. Whoops! We watch as the lady supervises the guests' entrance into the guest area. Wow, what a boring name. The same lady we saw in our dreams of the intro. Ignoring that foreshadowing, we rush past the guests and learn nothing new. This isn't super relevant information, but I think you still need to know about the gnome who put this dude's hand in a bucket of presumably warm water. I love gnomes. Look at this one. He's helping us with our hunger issue. See, aren't they just the... Six! He had perfectly good sausage! Man, I hope no detail gets added to make this even more depressing. Moving past that atrocity, we enter the quarters of the lady, a woman who's pretty much an Onryo. When entering her bedroom, there's a hint of lost family of sorts, with paintings of children torn off the wall and covered. Not enough information to confirm any of this, but there is a strong hint here of trauma, which is how Onryos are made. She has the movement, power, and violence of an Onryo, so by my accounts, she is one. A bit off topic, but we can hear her humming this tune. And when we get her attention, the atmospheric music starts playing a slowed down version of that humming. Back on topic. Her walls are covered in different pictures, several of which are these very gross close-up of eyes. 6 gets chased down by the lady, but guns her down with a mirror. Then she gets hungry, eats the lady, which causes her to absorb some energy from her. That is too many pronouns. That's confusing. Conservative moment. Then she gets hungry, eats the lady, which causes her to absorb some energy from the lady. Then she kills all the guests aboard and leaves them all. So what was the lady's purpose? Well, on the official Little Nightmares website, it says, with graceful restraint, the lady casts a hypnotic spell that keeps the engine running. What's this spell, you may be wondering? Well, in the DLC that takes place at the same time as the main game, we get a bunch of gnomes to activate the engine in the maw. This takes little to no coercion on our part, because the children yearn for the mines. Actually, we later find out the reason for this is that the gnomes are under the direct control of the lady. More specifically, at the end of the last DLC, we are turned into a gnome ourselves, and the game ends with us hanging out in a familiar room. So, yeah, the gnomes are kids. More information that you need to be aware of from this DLC is that the lady has these paintings of a conglomeration of eyes and flesh.
Whoa! Whoa! Wait! Whoa! Whoa! This is major spoilers for you, Chase, but that's the ending of Little Nightmares 2. That's what all the eyeballs are about, actually.
Next is this scene where we see the lady with her mask off. She looks grotesque, but what's odd is if you look at her real model versus the one in the mirror, 1, their movements don't line up, and 2, her real face is not shaped the same. This scene is what many people believe let 6 figure out how to kill the lady. The runaway kid saw her despising her shape in the mirror, gets turned into a gnome, 6 eats kid, absorbs his memories, and figures it out like that. I don't think that's definitive by any means, but I have no better ideas or evidence to the contrary, so sure. Before we cover a game, let's cover a comic book. This comic series shows a group of kids talking about their past. Many of them encounter this melted-faced man called the Ferryman. He often comes in times of trouble and whisks the kids off elsewhere, though where to is not specified. Except in one case. 6. The timeline of what we see is not clarified, but I believe this comic takes place just before the main game, but within the maw. Judging by the fact that these children are not seen in the game, but 6 leaves the maw by the end, the leech killing a kid tells us that it's on the maw, so this campfire is either before or during the game. With that, there's an implication that the ferryman has taken all these kids to the maw.
Why? 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 Why?
There's 2 reasons I can think of. The first one that I honestly don't think is true, and I'll explain much later, is that he's hoping one of them can stop the lady and the maw. The other one is that he's serving the kids up on a platter for the maw. But that's all the useful information from this comic. Up next is Very Little Nightmares, a mobile game. This girl is the girl in the yellow raincoat. Your parents must be so proud. Especially since all I have to say about you is that you get murked by some doll lady and have your coat wash away only to get picked up later. I didn't play this game, so I really don't have much else to add. As far as I can tell, it's an origin story for a coat. Oh yeah, 6 is in it, helps this chick out, watches her die, and then dips, so... That's it. Up next, and honestly my favorite, is Little Nightmares 2. This kid is called Mono. He technically has a comic that takes place prior to this, but it's so sparse on useful information that I'm just gonna skip it. We start with a vision of a door at the end of a hall, marked with an eye. Then Mono wakes up next to a TV in the woods. He eventually enters the hunter's house. The only real lore I have to give you is that he's a hunter, he hides his face, and he's a serial killer. That's it. Anyway, Mono finds a little girl trapped inside playing with a music box. This girl is 6. She's back and suspiciously not hungry. Mono grabs an axe, breaks down the door, and 6 runs away. You're welcome. Her fear of you ends practically instantaneously, and she is now your new friend. Skip ahead, you Courtney love the hunter, and get on a boat. Here they enter the Pale City. The buildings are bent over as if in pain here, and there's a strange boy here. He's not real. Cool. We see TVs in unusual places. I'm gonna be honest, the only explanation I have for these placements is far-fetched and lacking evidence.
You are ridiculous. You haven't so much as gotten up since you started watching that show. No more TV until you go outside. I've been sleeping with your brother.
So have I.
Eventually, Mono comes into contact with a TV that plays very loudly. You approach the TV and make the image. Can we turn that down, please? Mono enters the TV and we run down the hallway, only for 6 to pull you out. We continue on and go into a large, ominous school. Here we see another child. You do the obvious thing and chase him down, just a tiny. Oh, I don't like this child. Alright, you wee little buggers. I've had enough of your shot.
Oh, they accounted for that. Wait, those ones have their heads smashed in.
So, these aren't actual children as far as I can tell. These little nightmares are called the bullies. They're dull people that make it their life's goal to be as unlikable as possible, probably. They can be seen delighting in the torment of other people, including each other. Nothing a spoon can't take care of. Anyway, as you go looking for 6, you come across this lady. Oh, that's not that bad. It's just the doll lady. This is the teacher. What information I can find of her that isn't pure speculation is sparse. Yet, thanks to her Tandy Strophius impression, she's one of the most memorable villains in the series. You save 6 from the Little Nightmares, and she is pissed. She full-on does a head slam from Dying Light 2 on this little bugger.
Dang.
I mean, why wouldn't she be mad? Look how they strung her up. I'd be pissed. However, I do think this is significant, something I'll come back to later. Blah, 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 blah. Escape from the teacher, go outside in the rain, get this beautiful shot, pick up this jacket. Look familiar? It belonged to the girl with the memorable name. Now 6 has it, full circle or something like that. Did I mention I didn't play very Little Nightmares? We go into this creepy building, and there are hanging beds here. I can't even guess what that's about.
Gosh dang it.
We find this flashlight, and the first thing we see is this stupid eye. I wonder if eyes mean anything in this series. Mono runs into another TV. God dang it, turn it off! 6 pulls you out, blah, 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 blah. You continue in the hospital and come across Thing from Wednesday, kill it, and find 6. I see you're handling this all well. Then you find these mannequins who can only move in the dark. I'll give more information about them when I discuss the upcoming guy, but for now, all you need to know is that spinning is not a good trick.
Here! The technique I saw on YouTube doesn't work.
As you proceed, you run into, kill him with the fire! Much better. Oh, should probably address that. This is the Doctor, and he is easily the scariest thing in the series to me. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he taps into some childhood fear of mine. Like I might secretly be afraid of obese people. I don't know.
I hate this guy so much. I hate him so much. I don't use the face cam, so you can't see how much I'm like reacting this, but oh my gosh, I am like, I hate this guy so much.
So, as much as I hate him and would love to move on, of course he has important evidence surrounding him, so I have to talk about him more. First off, we can see that he has all these masks on the wall, the same kind of mask we see people of the mall wearing in Little Nightmares 1. So it would appear that the doctor here supplies people with masks. In fact, it kind of appears as if he himself is wearing one of those masks. The hunter was also wearing one of those masks. He can also be seen maintaining these dummies as if they're people. They also move like people, and we take one off life support and it actually kills it. And this hand has skin. They're people. This SOB turns people into dummies who live by weeping angel rules. I hate him. I hate him so much. Everything about him is awful. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him.
Say the line!
No.
Say the line.
Say the line.
I would rather die to that fat slug than say that joke.
Say the line. Say the line. Say the line. Say the line.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
Moving on, we go outside and... Alright, same. Moving on, Yeah, relatable. So anyway, look at these clothes left... Dude! Chill! I'm trying to point out the clothes. You know, fine, screw it. Let's do this. Alright, these are the viewers. Citizens of this stupid city who are stupid enough to get addicted to TV spewing out stupid crap from the stupid signal tower. They will watch the TV at all costs and eventually just themselves. Their faces are melted like the ferryman.
Which is a connection I made just now while writing this. Wait, this actually changes everything.
Okay, so the clothing... Oh, this video is gonna be so long. Holy frick. Okay, time to start speedrunning this. Mono finds another TV. Six does not pull him out in time, and he unleashes the Hat Man from my Benadryl trips. Sorry, the Thin Man. He chases you, Six picks an atrocious hiding spot, and reaches out for your help. You do not give it. The Thin Man takes your friend, and then his leave. He leaves Six's soul behind, thus explaining the ghost children we've been seeing around. Mono discovers he can teleport through TVs like Sadako and sees an eye while doing this. Alarming. Anyway, he watches viewers worshipping the signal tower, offing themselves. Tries to save Six again, but then she gets re-napped and Mono is chased by the Thin Man again. He escapes, gets hurt, and is led out to the street by Six's soul. Here the Thin Man finds Mono again, but Mono fights back with supernatural powers. He kills the Thin Man, then folds space to put himself right in front of the signal tower. Notice how the buildings bend forward like we saw earlier? Inside the signal tower, space and gravity have stopped working. Here we follow the sounds of the same music box we heard when we first met Six. Sidebar. This is such a cool example of dynamic music in gaming. The quality of the music changes depending on what door you're at. Like, it's not even just directional. I was able to figure out where I needed to go on my mono TV. Like, I didn't have mono TV. The quality of it changes, like how much reverb's on it, so you can tell where you need to go even if you don't have a stereo. It's awesome. Anyway, you reach what I consider to be the saddest part of the game, seeing Six's fate. She has been transformed into a monster by the signal tower. You shout at Six to get her to leave her music box open to be destroyed. This enrages Six and she tries to kill you. You use a lack of proper space law to eventually destroy the box, returning Six to her former self. But while all of this is happening, the tower has been changing all around you, and once you freed Six, its true nature is revealed. The tower is not just a place, but a living thing. An amalgamation of flesh and eyes reminiscent of Yog-Sothoth from the Lovecraft mythos. You run away from the encroaching amorphous blob, jumping, climbing, dodging debris and organs. The bridge collapses behind Six, and trusting your friend, you leap to her to catch you as she always does. That's not a joke, she actually drops you into the abyss. Before I explain why, let's finish the game real quick. Six dips and Mono climbs onto the only safe surface around, a lone chair on a pile of flesh and eyes. The eyes grow closer to him and are about to crush him when the walls return and the abyss leaves you. So Mono sits on his perverse throne and slowly becomes what he feared. What he killed. The Thin Man. Also, in the secret ending that I had totally got and didn't have to lift off someone else's footage, Six travels through a TV, sees her soul, gets real hungry, and sees a pamphlet for the Maw, thus confirming that this is a sequel. So, what was all that about, huh? So obviously, Mono was the Thin Man the whole time, which means he's in sort of a time loop. Think less Groundhog Day and more Prisoner of Azkaban. The present is directly influenced by the future and the past at the same time. Still don't get it? That sucks. Moving on to why Six dropped Mono. Mono sacrificed everything for her, saved her repeatedly. If you ask the community, they'll tell you Six is just a psychopath and that's it, but there's way too much information here that does not lead me to that conclusion. In my opinion, there's a combination of two things: trauma and corruption. From her time in Very Little Nightmares all the way to the Signal Tower, Six has been under constant duress. Notable traumas include being held hostage by the hunter, who we established as a serial killer, and the bullies who tortured her. Again, after being freed, she brutalizes one of them, Dying Light 2 style. A lot of people point to this and the mannequin hand as evidence of her natural psychotic behavior, but, like, wouldn't you want to kill someone who was torturing you? That doesn't necessarily make it right, but I don't think it makes you a psychopath. Then there's the hand. I mean, weird, but as far as she can tell, this isn't anything alive, so what does it matter if she breaks it? Again, not one of the telltale signs of psychopathy. The trauma angle can explain this because, as many people point out, the first time Six sees Mono's unmasked face properly is right before she drops him. This could easily be her putting two and two together that Mono is the Thin Man and making a survival choice. The other angle goes in tandem with the previous one. Six has been corrupted by the Signal Tower, and it's safe to say that has had consequences on Six's well-being. As well, through the Thin Man, it has removed her soul and replaced it with a hunger. So that's why I think Six dropped Mono, a combination of loss of innocence and soul. It's a survival decision that had much bigger implications than she realized. You may be wondering what the Signal Tower truly is other than a bunch of eyes. To answer that, we need to go over the last story thread, an audio drama called The Sounds of Nightmares. The Sounds of Nightmares follows a clinical counselor named Otto as he attempts to help a young girl named Noon, spelled like this, don't ask, it's not important. Noon gets treated for some water-related parasite and now has headaches and nightmares. So naturally, she's locked away from her family and studying. As the series goes on, Noon describes her nightmares to Otto. Many details of these nightmares seem to intrigue Otto. Noon can smell in her dreams. Her dreams seem to be connected to other people's dreams, and she sees a man who looks so melted, she calls him the Candleman. Otto gets kind of hyper-fixated on the Candleman as he recognizes Noon's description of him as someone he knows as the Ferryman. Yes, the very same Ferryman from before. This and one other detail will be the most important pieces to the puzzle, but let's let the series speak for itself in the meantime. Otto starts breaking the Hippocratic Oath and forcing Noon to recount her dreams in painful detail to the point where she starts having panic attacks. He's doing all of this because he believes Noon is going to the same place his little sister disappeared in when they were young. This dream realm is called the Nowhere. It seems children can travel there in their dreams. This is where the games take place. While watching Noon sleep, for science of course, Noon vanishes and reappears in her sleep. Doc Ock then gets her to do this while she's recounting her dream. At this point, Noon discovers she has a brain tumor. This is where the nightmare and headaches are coming from. However, what's interesting is Noon loses her headaches and pain while in the Nowhere, as if while inside, her tumor's gone. Eventually, Noon and Otto go into the dream world together, roll with it, and Noon encounters the Ferryman once more, an encounter that Otto can only listen to for technical reasons. The Ferryman takes Noon by the hand and leads her into a space where eyes twinkle like stars in the sky. He's very cryptic in his speech. One of the few coherent things he says to Otto when he asks to cross into the Nowhere is,
"Not so dimmed, but to plunge you must be pushed."
You don't find the Ferryman, he finds you. Noon accepts the Ferryman's invitation into the Nowhere and disappears forever. What information is told to us here opened my eyes to the true horror of what we were looking at. Noon is not from the world of Little Nightmares. She's from our world, or at least something close. She was pulled into the nowhere from her dreams and actually went there physically. And she accomplished this with the guidance of the ferryman, who we know takes children to the maw. And what's more is he has the same facial features as the viewers. Now we come to the meat of this video. It is my belief that Little Nightmares is about a Lovecraftian entity plucking children out from the real world, dropping them into its own to feed on them one way or another, similar to the entity from Dead by Daylight. The ferryman is a servant of the signal tower. He is manipulating and taking children from our world and dropping them off at the maw. And now, I have to prove it. So a quick introduction to this red thread. Purple threads equal direct connections to the signal tower. Like, there's no arguing. The red threads here equal secondary connections. Pretty much, it's not a direct connection to the signal tower, but tangentially through one other direct connection. And blue is the truly tangential connections that are connected, but tangentially. One of the key connecting threads is the ferryman, namely his face being identical to the viewers. The viewers are deformed by the signal tower via the TVs, a very distinct deformity that is not repeated anywhere else in the series, except the ferryman. So, it's reasonable to assume that the ferryman's appearance is a direct result of the signal tower. That's hardly hard proofs, I need more, but that is the focal point of my argument. The ferryman takes Six to the maw, a hostile floating restaurant that feeds children to guests. The woman in charge of the maw knows the true nature of the tower, hanging pictures of exactly that in her home. The purpose of the maw is to feed the guests with an unquenchable hunger. But how'd they get that hunger? Well, let's look at someone else who has it. Six. Six was taken by the Thin Man, who serves the tower. We prove that he's a servant of the tower with the fact that the tower's influence is through the same means as the Thin Man's power. When the Thin Man takes Six, he takes her to the tower, where she is corrupted, thus proving the Thin Man's servitude to the tower. Alright, once freed from the tower, we see Six's soul separate from her body and instantly go into a bout of hunger. This hunger did not show up in all of Little Nightmares 2 until this point. So, it's reasonable to assume this hunger comes from the same event that caused the soul separation. Also, the soul is seen every time Six eats, highlighting this even more. Thus, I conclude the source of the guest's hunger is the same source as Six's hunger, the tower. The residents who have been deformed and corrupted by the tower buy masks from the doctor to cover their deformities. Why this is better, I do not know. Maybe they're just stupid. Also, Noon probably got eaten on the maw or is yearning for the mines with the other gnomes. So, to recap, the tower has three main servants: the ferryman to bring children from the real world into the nowhere, the Thin Man to collect and corrupt those children wandering around the Pale City, and the lady to maintain the maw. The residents of the nowhere have been physically deformed to the point of wearing masks and likely lost their souls in the process. Perhaps they were once children, like Mono and Six, taken by the Thin Man, had their souls ripped out, and transformed into these monstrosities with insatiable appetites. Kinda like the Wendigo, but fat instead of skinny. What I'm still unsure of is the point of the maw in the tower's plan. It's clear the maw exists as part of the tower's will, but to what end, I'm not fully sure. I would love to hear your thoughts of what it could possibly be in the comments. The thing that stands out to me about this story is the ferryman and tower's manipulation of the children to get them to agree to come here in this world of Little Night. This joke's worn out. Noon knows what's in the nowhere, but she still picks it over the real world. There are two comparisons I want to make here. The first one I mentioned prior, the entity from Dead by Daylight. For those who don't know, the entity will peek into a dimension that is not its own, pluck people out, and drop them into one that is its own. Here they will be forced to play the entity's game that is designed to feed the entity everyone's heightened emotions.
This can happen a lot.
Oh, I'm hung somewhere.
Yeah, I see. I'm coming for you.
I'm hung everywhere.
The way the entity picks people depends on circumstances. Sometimes they stumble into the entity's secrets and it just sort of pops them out of existence. Other times it directly manipulates someone's life to turn them into a monster. take the spirit. Her father's life spiraled so hard that he snapped and butchered his family. It's implied that the entity had some input in all of this and pushed the snap along. This ends with the daughter, Rin, making a deal with the entity as she died, thus becoming the spirit. There's no evidence the tower is causing Noon's tumor like Ego did to Chris Pratt's mom, but it's not exactly impossible considering how the ferryman operates. The other comparison I want to point out is Satan from the Bible. As some of you might know, the devil in the Bible is nothing like how the movies and TV shows portray him to be. He isn't some red-horned monster who's God's equal. He's just some pretty boy who goes up to people like, what if you sinned? But the reason I compare the tower and the ferryman to Satan is exactly because of that manipulation. Think of the Garden of Eden. Everything is described as good in the creation story of Genesis 1. Then in Genesis 2, God tells Adam not to eat of the fruit or they will surely die. Then in Genesis 3, Satan shows up as a snake and is all, you won't die, God's lying to you. He just doesn't want you to be as good as him. Your life right now isn't as good as it would be if you sin. They agree, and sin, look at that, everything sucks now and the devil's a liar. Who would have thought?
The devil is responsible for those things in that he introduced sin to the world, but it was our choice to partake in sin. By free will, we chose to bite of the apple. We chose to enact our free will in both good and bad ways. The devil's objective in the world is not to be a scary face you see in the dark at night. It's not to be a predator that gets you killed as quick as he can to just like slaughtering people or whatnot. Is that an end effect of it? Sure. But really, the devil's objective is to just turn you away from God. Now, is the better way of doing that being evil, being awful, or is it giving people what they need outside of him? He gives riches. You get, like I mentioned, Pharaoh, rich man who has all this magic, all these powers that was given to his sorcerers and whatnot. He gives them exactly what they need, because as long as they don't need God, then he's won.
I don't know. That's the vibe I get from the tower and the ferryman. Convincing people hell is better than the alternative, which, while wrong, can be convincing with the right amount of trauma in one's life. I started a comment war below by mentioning the Bible, didn't I? Well, that's not really what I wanted to do, but I'd still like to hear your thoughts on all of this regardless. This video isn't about convincing you whether to believe the Bible or not, it's about little nightmares. So tell me your thoughts on all that. Am I right? Am I stupid? Let me know in the comments below. Please. I don't upload often, but I try to put as much effort into these as I can, so if you want to see another video like this in a year's time, consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and as always,
where else are you gonna find this content, bro?